Greetings, YouTube. So I went out and I got a new tool handle. Yeah, I know, believe it or not, I actually buy things new occasionally. For example, like these bolts and these cap nuts, because I want a finished look on this one. I had never seen this particular type of tool handle before. It's got a flat profile, comes with a groove already cut in it. It's got a nice rectangular head, got 3 mounting holes all set. So this thing is just begging to be turned into a weapons build. Probably more than one, because I may buy more than one of these for different projects. Now, my initial plan was to find a piece of plate steel, 1/8 inch thick, because that's what that is, an 1/8 inch thick, and about 1 foot wide and about 2 feet long, and build kind of a war paddle type thing out of it. Kind of a fusion of a war paddle and an axe or a great spear. But at the moment, I can't access places that deal in sheet metals of any variety. And the hardware store didn't have anything I could even repurpose into what I needed. Unless I was like willing to buy one of their, big heavy cargo carts and then cut it up with an angle grinder, which I'm not. So I had to like kind of step back and think, okay, now what can I do with this cool handle, because I got the cool handle, and I'd like to do a project with it. And the nice thing is, this is, as long as I don't change this at all, whatever I put in it, I can unbolt it and put something else in it if I want. So this is kind of a temporary stay-in-place design idea here. So what I do have plenty of, though, are those old saw blades. And this one's got a nice aggressive tooth on it. I like that. So what I've done already is I have sketched out what I want. That's kind of bright. Well, it's not any less bright. Sketched out what I want to remove. So all of this area in here is going to be removed. I'm going to cut a couple of holes here, which will be where I then come up to meet them at. Hopefully that'll make my job a little easier if I already have the holes there. So those are going to go in first. I'm going to use the largest of my Blair Roto Broach hole cutters and cut through that. And once I get those done, I will then take my angle grinder, start in this little notch here, cut to the hole, from here this notch, and cut to the hole, and then cut the straight section in between, which hopefully will all be pretty easy. And that's all centered off of this. And this is not going to be used at all, because that hole is going to end up like here. So that hole is not being used at all in this build. And then I will then drill the 3 holes through the saw blade that correspond to these, with the smallest of my Blair Roto Broach hole cutters. So first up is going to be setting up the holes, the drill press, so I can start with these 2 holes right there. And here I have this thing set up, and I'm just about to drill the first hole. And I just want to make a comment that this little bracket here has been really handy. It is very versatile. As you can see, it's holding down a circular saw blade without any difficulty, because all I got to do is bite that corner. I don't have to hold the whole thing down. All I want to do is make sure it's going to keep it from turning. The lockdown, the table's keeping it from turning. Everything else is locked down, so everything is nice and secure. So this is just so useful. It really does work well, and it's so simple. It's just a straight steel bar with 2 holes at the end. I think there's a 1/4 20 bolts that I just had kicking around my shop. So yeah, sometimes it's the simplest designs that really come through for you. So here we go. We've got the first 2 holes cut. Now it's going to be to cut these 2 diagonals. And I didn't get this one quite exactly where I wanted to, but this is a post-apocalyptic design, so there's a certain amount of fudge factor involved in here, and I'm okay with that. I'll probably start with this one here. I'm going to cut this tooth off, because this tooth will be in my way, and I will probably cut this tooth out for the same reason, because trying to come in here with that tooth in there is going to make my life difficult. So those 2 teeth are going to come off first, and then I'm going to probably cut that one first and get that one done, and then come over here and do this one. And I just got this clamp down to my workbench with a simple C-clamp. And the workbench top is 3/4 inch plywood. It's good quality plywood. And I have a couple of holes in here for also the other clamping options. I just don't need those clamping options at the moment. This works quite nicely. The nice thing about it is that the original surface was MDF board, and it had been soaked with oil because the guy who owned this before me, I bought this used. This whole bench I picked up for 45 bucks. He had been using it as a gun station for like doing work on his firearms. So there was gun oil soaked into the top of the bench, and it was a standard size, and I wanted a bigger work surface. So I just bought myself a 2x4 piece of pre-cut plywood and just bolted the whole thing together. And this, in which worked out nicely because I could get my vise, for example, it's right here on the edge. These two right here go right through the edge that is over the original work surface, and this one goes all the way through both of them. They're nice and tight, not going any place. But it does give me some options for clamping that I would not have had if I were working with just the original work surface. And the nice thing about this is that if I do beat the crap out of it, it's easy to take off, flip over, put back down again, and replace at some future date if I want to. So that's a nice option here. But it makes it very easy to clamp with a C-clamp, and I appreciate that. So sorry for not being on the holes there for a sec. So next up, start cutting things up with my angle grinder. So here we have the piece cut out. I didn't do too badly. I think I got a little tiny nick here, but remember that's all going to be inside a piece of wood, so you're never going to see that. So now I'm going to clean this up, round these over, make it look pretty, make sure that this is where I want it to be. I've got my flap wheel installed on my angle grinder, and I'm wearing my apron with my leather section here because this thing throws off a lot of sparks. Yes, it does, and I have burned holes through my clothes in the past. I'd like to avoid doing that today because behind the clothes is me. So next, clean this whole thing up so that I can then put this into the tool handle so that I can again get the layout pattern for the holes themselves for the bolts. So I got this where I want it. I've got the blade centered where I want it. And I clamped everything down so I could then use this center punch to put dimples in the middle of each of those holes. So now I have a marking exactly where the tip of my rotor broach is going to cut a hole. These are just so darn handy. I got these at like a yard sale or an estate sale or something. I think I paid less than $5 for an entire set of these. Just so handy to have around. I mean, a standard, set punch is also very handy. But having something like this that I can get, because I've got ones that are the exact size of the hole, and I have an entire set of them, it makes things much, much easier for getting a hole that's going to be pretty much dead center where you want it. Sometimes it's the simple things, but if you have the right tool, it can make your job a whole lot easier. And here we go. One finished Sawtooth Battleaxe. And I think this is a little more interesting visually than just putting a round saw blade on this handle. I think this is more interesting. And I like the contrast between the light colored wood and the shiny cap nuts and the rust colored side of this blade, which is the side I've decided to display. The other side's got my layout marks. Well, you actually can't really see the layout marks at this point, which is kind of nice. But it's got the back of which is not all that pretty, just the logo and stuff. I kind of like that the rusty look in contrast to the shiny cap nuts and the light colored handle. So yeah, I'm really kind of happy with the way this came out. I'm now going to take this outside, get some still shots for my Instagram and for my DeviantArt page, as well as the end of this video. So I hope that you have enjoyed this latest weapons build. I think it came out pretty nice. Not that what I had originally planned, mind you, but sometimes that is where we end up when it comes to doing things, especially if you're dealing with scrap-style junk weapons. Sometimes you don't end up where you want to, where you originally started. The journey sometimes wanders in hither and nigh and yon and such. So here you go. One Sawtooth Battleaxe.